Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. And as always, muchísimas gracias to everyone for you guys' words, prayers, and your amazing support. To myself, as helping me get the message out there. To those that make it something out of hearing it, right? Gracias. Now, before I get into the story at hand today, just be aware in my story, I haven't skipped over the current happenings in the cárcel of Mazatlan that I promised with the Aztecas. It's just, it will make sense. The minute we get back to Culiacan on sharing new camaradas there in Ectec, which I will put a foundation behind it, right? That goes back to Mazatlan. But I will continue off. I told my last time, touched a little bit on my story was we basically left Downer, right, in Zacatecas, and we were supposed to head back to Culiacan. But nevertheless, on the way back, me and Tweety, right, he had gone up there, and us two got assigned to meet with Angel with Sticks and Nayarit, and we were supposed to do the old man from Ontario a favor for Night Out from 18th Street. At this time there was a lot of autos, right, from 18th Street out in Nayarit, out in the coast area. And, 18th Street's a big neighborhood. So they had their own avenues towards Night Out and where they were getting it. It was their business. We didn't really know a lot, right? Nevertheless, it was asked of a favor for us to go to Angel for him to guide us down to this little town called Holotmba. Me personally, I've never heard of this little town, right? But that's where Sticks came in from Southside Woodview, right? So nevertheless, he ended up, well, Tweety ended up getting there, and we ended up going with to meet Sticks, right, in the peak. And I sit back and think Nayarit was never kind, but there was good moments, right? So I shouldn't say that. But anyways, we went there and we met up with him in a little neighborhood, right? It's called Mercado del Mar or something in that effect, right? We met up with him there, and we got organized, right? And at this time, remember, it was Beltran's territory, right? So it is why Sticks was there. Cause him with the lease on, and he wasn't noticeable, right? So we stood out big time. Well, at least myself. More so than even Tweety, right? But anyways, we got there. It was late at night. We picked up the homie Sticks, and we ended up taking like an hour's drive, right? Towards San Blas, but through the back way. For those that know, right? We went through all these little towns and eventually got out to this crossway that was to El Llano. It was El Llano, and straight ahead, I believe, was the beach, right? We got to the coast. So we were to get into the Llano, and then the next town after El Llano was Holotmba. You know, as we're going on, the homie Sticks tells us that it's a good little area, right? That he's gone out there to the beach, which was platanitos is close by, or tortuguitas or something, uh, tortuguitas or ranitas, something to that effect. Do excuse me. But anyways, we get to Holotmba, and it's from the start, it's a weird little town, right? I'm talking about, this was my first experience really out there like that in the booties, right? In the mountains, remember. I hadn't been out so long, and it was nothing but coastline and nothing but mountains, and it was tropical forest, to be sincere, right? And anyways, this little town was literally, if you blink, you miss, right? It was on the main road, and I ain't seen no no type of town. But anyways, you get to the town, and there's this bajada. You go down towards down, you start seeing houses, and you go over this creek, and there's more houses, but it's all like casas outside, right? Out in literally up in the mountains or towards the coast. And we eventually get through the back, right? It's in between that beach I mentioned in Holotmba, where we met with another camarada, right, from Stockton. Do excuse his name slips my head, but it's a big fellow, right? He was a homie, and he guided us to the camaradas, right, from 18th Street, which we met Rojo, we met Raccoon, and the main dude was Bullet, right? And first and foremost, I didn't know these individuals, but at least me being fresh out, I had all this ways of pinpointing people, right? At least when they spoke about being in the system in the States, and to basically pinpoint him from being funny, you know, and not to say that I was this and that. It's just something you come used to it, excuse me, right? Especially when an individual tells you he was in Cali for a long time on a main line, no shoe, and things like that. Then you could tell when he don't have him set on between his legs, He's so show off. He's a panchero. Funny. Allow me to explain, right? If you've been in the 180 and you were in the mix in them times where you had to literally do something to go to the shoe or earn your tats, right? In them time frame where tats meant something, right? Like Campolero, Sur, um, Sureño, all that cultura work. If you're really about it, you hit it. At least for it being out, flashed out, right? But when you run across an individual that in his head, he tells you he's done 15 years on a 180 lines or 270, whatever. And, when I was out there, I got to know a lot of prisons, not because I was there, but it was because I was reaching out to certain camaradas on the yard that ran things to me, right? So it's what you're going through day by day, day in and out. So when I see Rojo and Bullet, you see these vatos, well, we got there and we introduced ourselves, and they got on the cuerno with Tecolote from 18th Street, right? In the feds, and he literally hung the whole phone over to Tweety. So basically, Tweety got told what we're gonna be picked up. Tweety is a big old tecato, he's a camarada, but if you know, you know him, right? So right away, to not have misunderstandings, we also got told what we were gonna pick up and take with us, right? Directly from dude. And which, again, we come from Zacatecas. It was the most peaceful time that I personally, after so many years, have gone through. And it's I started pinpointing things to Angel. Things just didn't start adding up, right? And I know Sticks, he's done his thing, but he didn't have that much glitch system wise. Tweety did, but again, that fool, he stayed on one, right? He was a knucklehead, but he stayed on one. So, anyways, it started with Bullet, right? Homeboy was all sleeved out, from the elbow down, both hands, everything. A lot of things with meanings that you don't floss like that, right? And I mean, if you already have other parts of your body, right, like myself, back, stomach, chest, whatever, then you basically run out of places, right? But he also had a full neck, right? Head at Rojo, with his neighborhood and Campo this and just things like that at least myself I wasn't used to seeing them, especially from the main line, from someone that never did no shoe time. But when we went out to this little arroyo, as I mentioned, and just to basically relax, right? It was the next day in the morning. We got there, we introduced ourselves, we laid our head, and the morning we went just to get to know each other. But when the vatos took off their shirts, nada, literally no tacas. Basically, the tacas they had was from shirt up to where people could see it. That ain't somebody that knows how to do time or how to hide from the squad or was even in the program, right? That was the first flag for me personally. I told Stick this, and just more stuff. I won't make this video long by telling you all this, but basically a lot of little stuff that didn't make sense, and then I heard a name, right, and when I heard that name, right away I requested for them to get Nairo back on the cuerno, with all due respect. Just basically I needed to verify something, so within a couple hours or so they did, and I request, I basically ask, hey, con todo y dado respeto, if I can ask, who's supposed to sign off on this? The camaradas here, where's it supposed to come from so that once we turn it in, we addressed it to the señor, that old man that so and so turned it into us, and we're turning it into him for you, para usted. And then he said, from Pelon, from 18th Street, from West Side 18th Street. So I said, all right, got it. Muchas gracias. Keep in mind, I'm on the phone, right? And, once he said Pelon from 18th Street, right away, I had mentioned this individual before. Guys, remember a guy that they had us, or they stopped us one time. He played around with me till he took off all his capucha and everything. He was in a Policía Nayarit uniform, right? And it was a homie Spike from 18th Street. He was literally doing his thing, right? And he helped us that day to punch, right? And anyways, at this time I had his cuerno, right? So I told this vato, say, ahorita vengo, voy por un chesco and a couple fracos, right? So I punched and I got on the cuerno with homie and I basically told him, hey, for look, you know, me and you, we go past this BS stuff. I want to know what's up with the dudes from 18th Street in Holotmba and Pelon. Because by this time we have heard Pelon was doing his own thing. He don't want nothing to do with no other Billies but his homeboys, right? And in this case, it was night out. And he was moving on camaradas. Because he was saying he was 18th Street, but he was full Beltran Leiva. And again, he knew the ins and outs, right? So he knew Billies or homies mainly stayed with Sinaloa or in this case, era, excuse me, with Jalisco. So he was definitely hunting camaradas, right? Especially knowing we're destined to go back to Culiacan. So I asked him and he told me like, hey, you know what? See, move. That fool's gunning for you. They're setting you guys up. You see, in this meeting, not old man D, he sent Tweety from Ontario, but the Billy Mono from Ontario was supposed to come with us. And I guess to some sense, Mono was basically questioning a lot of things, right? Because 18th Street was deep in Nayarit. They just weren't calling themselves homies no more. Well, some, but most over it, they were under Pelon, El Siete, or Pablo from 18. And anyways, I will later touch on them, but you know, he dicho y hecho. You know, the menace fight told me this. I said, all right, gracias, camarada. And he told me where you're gonna go. I don't even know where the hell I'm at, but I ain't no sitting duck, right? We didn't have no cuete, we didn't have nothing. It was supposed to be no headaches, right? It was just pick up and punch. You know, and but I got back there and basically I told Sticks and I told Angel, hey, we got a punch. You know, these cats ain't with us. But we talked to the Billy, I don't know if he's aware of this cat's actions. Because if he would have been aware, he wouldn't have told us it's being addressed by Pelon. Again, Pelon, he was doing his thing, right? With his homeboys, but under the Beltranes, period. And dicho y hecho, it was all a setup. They wanted to get us, and it's the first time that I experienced that, out in the woods or in the cerros type of thing. And it's because I remember we're behind a bridge, right? And you go over that bridge and there was a store. And then from that store you go up, there's like 5 houses. And then from then on, it's under a bridge and nothing but mountains, And I remember we're talking and, Bullet comes near me and Tweety. And when he comes near me, you could feel that tension, right? Like he was pumping himself to do something. Which I thought he was going to be the one doing punta, right? They had gotten their orders from Pelon, And I don't know what Naira was thinking, if he knew because it was going to reach Darrow, right? And well, there's gonna be some type of action, right? But nevertheless, you know, homeboy hesitated too long to be sincere, and I remember Tweety grabbed him. That time I dug down and grabbed a rock and just grabbed him, and me, Angel, and Tweety, we honestly, we broke, we took off. We went down that little street under that path and we just went uphill, right? And it was my first experience out there, and I'm not gonna say it was nah, I am gonna say, that there was fear that night. First off, what the hell would I know of waiting out in the mountains, right? That it was beautiful. But at night, when you're literally so silent, you could hear any little thing out there. It's like, you're not used to that. At least I wasn't. There's a cat, myself, right? That was most of his last years have been slammed in the shoe where program shuts down and you're able to rest or anywhere in the pinta, right? So being up in the mountains through woods, and you're literally hearing frogs, insects, all types of things. Is like, I don't care how tough you think you are, that first time you experience it, something becomes water. I'm sorry I say so bluntly, but it's true. Anyways, it was the longest night, I think, in the last 30 years. But I remember the minute sun started breaking, we took off, basically to warm up because it got cold. And till this day, I don't even know how we from going uphill, right, and downhill, literally all day. And then when night came, we basically said we could freeze and just dwell on thoughts or just keep striving. If we get snatched up, we get snatched up. So we kept striving, and we came out in this little town called, what is it, little town called? Do excuse me. I believe it's Palco or something like that. But it was way out there, right? If you literally went through the roads, I guess it was like a 40-minute car ride. But since we went uphill and just literally just, you know, at least me, I wasn't used to none of that at this point, right? Um, Once we got there, stakes knew the town, and we were able to reach someone and punch, and of course, right away I touched base over there and basically told what had happened, right? It was a setup, and basically we were gonna get smoked for the Beltranes. Cause the Beltranes, again, we had gone out there and started doing a lot of things, so they knew there was homies attached to certain families in Culiacan, right? And point blank, they didn't like homies, period, or norteños for that fact, right? Anything that came from Cali was considered to be enemigos, plásticos, and we should get what we had coming, period. But I basically informed that it was Pelon and that the rumors were true. He's setting up camaradas and this and that, and basically we addressed how we were able to converse with the Billy from 18, right? The Colote, and he okayed everything. To what extent? he was aware of things that was for him to decipher. It was not going to come on my mouth because, I ain't a stupid sureño or was at this time, right? I would never speak ill about a pili because I know that's your butt too. You could call it smart, you could call it cowardness, because we literally don't know how far we were from getting smoke. I think if dude wouldn't have hesitated, he would have domed us right there, right? And for whatever reason, we got guided out to that little town, and where none of us three, me specifically, I was the most backed up individual when it came to being in the woods, right? Or like in this type of territory at least. And today I don't even know how we just walked and walked and walked and just got somewhere. But I guess el miedo te hace hacer cosas, right? Makes you do things. So I don't know, a lot of factors. Nowadays I see it as, God had a different purpose for us, right? This was just a type of thing we had to go through, that type of experience to see him, which, be sincere, I didn't at this time, right? I'll be sincere, I just wanted revenge. And I was hoping I got back and told the rest of the Bealies and addressed certain things without getting family involved. At the end of the day, I was what I was, and I had made my decisions, and it was never going to change, right? But I expected more, right? Because basically the Bealies, when we got to Culiacan, got in touch with the feds, and they never questioned what we had heard in Saka because they know we know better, right? At least myself, I would never allow something to come out my mouth that could come back and bite me in the ass, right? Sorry. But they never did nothing about it. You see, they talked to the Billy out there from 18th Street, and he said he's never been in touch with Pelon out here, or no camaradas from 18th Street in Nayarit. Keep in mind, Tweety and myself spoke with dude. But it's just the type of thing that happens when you're a loyal sureño, campulero. When something hits the fans that has to do with them, their denial, more so than ever, it's gonna cost you everything you fight for us. You're guided to think you're supposed to act and do. The Billy saw us. Again, I was a dummy, right? At this time, growing up in the mountains, and as a time, I kind of got a little huesito for it and got better at it, but started liking them nights of hearing everything. But at this time, I literally was like, they threw 20 cats on me, and I was all scratched up from the face to from running through, through the hills from in the night. Even though I have my family in Culiacan and in Michoacan, I'm still a Cali boy, And at this time I lived more in prison than I had on the streets. So anyways, I suited up and booted up with night in the mountains, right? And they beat me down to, there was no part of my body that they didn't have. So they couldn't deny that what we were saying, right? And then they tried to reach out to them phones in Holotmba, and they weren't the same phones anymore. So how can one day Daryl call these phones and everything's cool? They will receive us, and they verify it with Nairo. Next thing you know, Nairo saying he don't know what we're talking about. So it was never spoken of again. A couple years went by and Pelon had the same battles hanged in Nayarit, right? It wasn't by our actions. And as I would tell later on, we ran across Pelon from 18 in Becaranza when we hit the joint there, which I will get into in a different story. But basically, that's why I say smart up, right? It's what you see now in the system and on the streets. You see this Pili Tecato ass people guiding camaradas or homies to do something. And when things hit the fan with another member, or when a barrio push back and they have a member that will listen, that member that guides you is going to throw you under the bus. And it would always happen because they come before you. Because that fear effect not only plays with us, it also plays with them. But they know how to be snakes better than we do, unfortunately, right? Well, at least I'll speak for myself. I was loyal pendejo, which is what we have to do. But that's why I say smart up. There's always proper guidelines. There's always ways to cover your butt. And I'm not saying in the sense of keeping information that could be considered snitching because that's going to ricochet. But do ask, and they would have to provide a backing. I won't get too much into it, but those are know what time it is now, right? Anyways, I just thought I would share my first meeting with Nayarit, or should I say out in the mountains, right? As later on it will become a common thing, right, of us going out and being torpedoes and hiding out in the hills, but more prepared, right? It wasn't like we went out that day, believe me. Usually when we went ahead, we had things, right? But anyways, that has no relevance, The message is just be smart when you're dealing with these individuals. Don't allow them to poison and ruin your life at the same time ruin your loved one's life. I will continue off from our arrival in back to Culiacan, and the new camaradas out there has touched a little bit about Mazatlan as I will start putting everything together. I hope I made some sense. Thank you, everyone. Please stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones.